Some pain doesn't scream. It sets the table. It buys the groceries. It smiles and says, "Of course," while quietly disappearing. We've all seen it. Someone gets treated like a role, not a person. The fixer. The wallet. The one who makes everything work because keeping the peace became their job. This story isn't here so we can celebrate anyone's humiliation. It's here to watch what happens when a man finally chooses himself. His mother-in-law handed him a guest list and said, "You'll pay for Thanksgiving dinner for 30 people. Make sure everything is perfect this time." His wife backed her up. He smiled and said, "Of course." But at 3 a.m., he wasn't cooking. He was at the airport, and 30 hungry relatives walked into an empty house. Now, let me tell you what they did when they realized the machine was gone. My name is Blaze Mercer, and I'm about to tell you the truth I've been swallowing for 5 years. Before I do, can you say listening in the comments or tell me where you're watching from? Sometimes knowing someone is there makes all the difference. And if stories like this matter to you, please subscribe. It's a small thing, but it helps me feel like my voice finally counts after years of being treated like the hired help in my own marriage. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. 3:00 a.m. at DFW Airport, I stood at gate C-18 holding nothing but a small carry-on and my boarding pass. My palms were damp, not from nerves about flying, but from the gravity of what I was leaving behind. I hadn't slept. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't told anyone. Just one small bag, one seat on a plane, and the sound of my name echoing through the terminal final boarding call for passenger Mercer Flight 427 to Key West. I stared down at my phone, vibrating in my pocket screen, lighting up with texts and missed calls stacked like bricks on my chest. "Are you up?" Mom's asking for the cooking timeline. This time it needs to be perfect. I didn't even need to open them. I knew who sent what just by the rhythm. My wife Tessa, tense but passive, and her mother Margot, all command and condescension. What they didn't know was that I'd already said yes. A few nights back, when they dumped the entire Thanksgiving burden on me, I'd smiled and said, of course I'll shop, of course I'll prep, of course I'll pay. Of course I'll wake up at 4 in the morning to cook dinner for 30 people like a goddamn banquet chef. Of course had been my way of surviving in that house. It was the verbal duct tape I used to hold my marriage together. But tonight I didn't answer. I flipped my phone to airplane mode and slipped it in my jacket. No texts, no guilt, no going back. I can still see our home in Frisco in my mind, clear as a blueprint. The dining table was already set, every place marked with a hand-lettered name tag I'd written the night before, napkins folded just so silverware aligned like soldiers. 30 places. Not 25, not 27, exactly 30. And in the fridge, a 24-pound frozen turkey that should have been thawing 2 days ago. That damn bird was still hard as concrete, just like me. I used to joke that my heart had to be half frozen to survive holidays in that house, but it wasn't funny anymore. I ran my fingers across the boarding pass and thought about what I was really running from. It wasn't just the mountain of side dishes or the stress of executing the perfect meal while everyone else drank wine and took selfies. It was the system. The machine I was part of. The role I'd accepted, where my usefulness was measured by how quietly I could absorb other people's chaos. Then I remembered the guest list. I'd taken a photo of it before they left it on the counter. It had all the names Janelle and Rob Drew and his new girlfriend, the Harringtons from the club, even some couple I'd never met but who Margot insisted were essential for networking. I opened the picture again, scanned through. 30 names. And then it hit me. My name wasn't on it, not at the bottom, not next to Tessa's, not even penciled in. I was the one cooking, paying, planning, and cleaning, and I wasn't even considered part of the dinner. I wasn't a guest. I wasn't family. I was the staff. And that's when I realized tonight I wasn't walking away from Thanksgiving. I was walking away from being invisible in my own life. I stepped through the gate as they closed the doors behind me. And now let me tell you everything. It started 4 days ago when my mother-in-law laid that piece of paper on my kitchen counter, like it was nothing more than a shopping list. It was Sunday afternoon, 4 days before Thanksgiving, and I was standing at the sink elbow deep in soap suds, rinsing wine glasses from our small family dinner. The house smelled like rosemary and chicken and bleach. Tessa had disappeared upstairs 30 minutes ago, claiming a headache. I stayed behind scrubbing casserole dishes and collecting crumpled napkins. It was always like this. I cooked, I cleaned, I played host. And then I erased all evidence I was there. I didn't even hear the door open. Just the sharp click, click, click of Margot's heels on the hardwood floor. She never knocked, just walked in like she owned the place. Technically, I guess she felt she did, reminding us every few months that her generous down payment is the reason we got this house in the first place. She stopped at the edge of the kitchen island and scanned the room with a look of judgment so practiced it felt baked into her bone structure. Her lips curled like she'd smelled something sour. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. No hello, no warm-up, just a crisp thump as she laid it on the counter next to the drying rack. I assume you'll handle Thanksgiving this year, she said, voice dripping with certainty, not request. I dried my hands and looked at the paper. Guest list. 30 names. Some familiar. Some I only recognized from Margot's gossip about the country club. I blinked. All 30, I asked. She didn't even look up. Well, yes. We want it done right. I wanted to ask who "we" was, but I already knew. And we'll need everything homemade, she added. No shortcuts this year. Not like last time. She arched an eyebrow and tilted her head toward the fridge as if my entire culinary record was housed inside that appliance. Okay, I said before my brain caught up to my mouth. She wasn't done. You'll cover the cost, of course. It's only fair. You're the host. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. Margot didn't laugh. Tessa came down the stairs right then, her timing as convenient as ever. She slid beside her mother and glanced at me like she was waiting for me to just roll with it. Let's make it great this year, babe, Tessa said. I don't want to hear Mom complain. I haven't even agreed yet, I muttered. Oh, come on, she said. You're amazing at this stuff. And besides, who else can pull it off? That's what it always came back to. My competency became my prison. They didn't ask because they knew I'd say yes, because I always did. I scanned the list again. Who's paying for all this, you are, Margot said, as if stating the weather. She leaned in softer, but colder. I'm sure it's no problem. After all, it's the least you could do considering who made this home possible. That again. The house. The debt that was never official but always implied. I looked at Tessa, expecting, hoping for a trace of conflict. All I saw was agreement, or worse, indifference. This is really important to her, she said. To us. The menu had notes: turkey glazed ham, 3 kinds of stuffing, 4 desserts, vegan options, gluten-free options, plus a separate line that just said, no nuts. Bo Harrington is allergic. Okay, I said finally. I'll make it perfect. That night after they left the kitchen, I sat down with the list and started mapping out a prep schedule. Cook times, oven temperatures, day-by-day grocery needs. But something bugged me. I opened the list again, scanning the names. And that's when I saw it. I wasn't on it. 30 people were invited. 30 guests were expected. But me, I wasn't even listed. I would cook for them. Pay for them. Host them. Clean up after them. But I wasn't considered one of them. I was never supposed to sit at that table. And just like that, something inside me, something I'd been burying for years, started to crack. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was embarrassed. Embarrassed that I hadn't seen it sooner. But that crack would become a fault line, and it was only a matter of time before it split everything wide open. By Sunday night, the kitchen didn't look like a kitchen anymore. It looked like a war room. I had my laptop open, spreadsheets stacked with color-coded tabs for timing oven use ingredient lists. One screen showed a timeline broken down by the hour, starting at 3:45 a.m. Thursday and ending at 1:57 p.m. I had drawn arrows to mark when each dish needed to start and finish. Multiple alarms were already scheduled in my phone, each with aggressive names like start corn casserole or die. But no matter how I shuffled the steps around, it didn't work. One oven, one stove, one man. Even with perfect precision, the math didn't work. Not unless I could clone myself or bend time. The turkey alone needed 5 hours. Add in the ham, the stuffing, the casseroles, the rolls, and somehow everything had to be hot and ready by 200 p.m. And that wasn't counting the desserts Margot insisted be made fresh or the gluten-free side dishes she added last minute for the Harringtons. I stared at the screen. They'd given me a task designed to fail, a trap disguised as a dinner. And the worst part, I would still try to make it work. I printed the guest list to recheck everything and noticed it again, something I had overlooked in my anger the day before. A name was missing. Nora. Nora Larkin was Tessa's cousin. She'd gone through a messy divorce earlier this year, and though we weren't close, she was always kind to me. Thoughtful in small ways. She was also the only one who ever texted to thank me after holidays. I picked up my phone and called her. "Hey," she said, sounding surprised. "Is everything okay? I just noticed your name isn't on the Thanksgiving list. Was that a mistake?" There was a pause on the other end. Then a soft laugh, sharp, sad. "No mistake," she said. "Your mother-in-law called me a few days ago. She said she didn't want me to feel uncomfortable, being newly divorced. Said maybe I should take some time for myself this year." My stomach sank. "She uninvited you because you're divorced." "She made it sound nice," Nora replied. "But yeah, that's what happened." We both sat in silence for a moment. "That's not okay," I finally said. "It's her house, her rules," Nora said, and I didn't correct her. Because it wasn't her house. It was mine. I hung up, walked back into the kitchen, and stared at the list again. 30 names. Perfect, polished, and filtered. People only made the cut if they looked good on paper. And I realized if one day I stopped being useful, if I ever said no, if I ever cracked my name would disappear too. That night, I barely slept. At 5:30 a.m., Monday, I pulled into the Costco parking lot before it opened. By 6:00, I was pushing a cart so full it creaked. I went aisle by aisle, crossing off items like I was prepping for a hurricane. Turkey, glazed ham, imported cheeses, 3 types of pies, organic cranberry sauce, sparkling cider in 6-packs. At checkout, the total made the cashier do a double take. "Feeding an army?" she asked. "Something like that," I said, swiping my card, trying not to wince. Outside, as I loaded the car, Mrs. Callahan, our neighbor, was walking her dog. She stopped when she saw me. "Morning, Blaze. Stocking up for Thanksgiving," I said, shutting the trunk. "We've got 30 people coming." She whistled. "Lord, that's a lot. Tell me about it." She looked at me for a second, then said something that lodged in my chest. "You know there's a difference between helping someone and standing by while they drown." I forced a smile. "Thanks, Mrs. Callahan." But her words followed me home. I unloaded bag after bag, still thinking about them. Inside, I started sorting. The kitchen turned into a maze of coolers, prep lists, and post-it notes. The air smelled like raw poultry and anxiety. That's when I saw the iPad left on the counter, still open on the group chat Tessa had with her family. I didn't mean to snoop, I only glanced. But that glance was enough. Messages about seating charts, preferred dishes, coordinated outfits, and then one line from Margot that made my hands go cold. Blaze already agreed to handle everything, it's practically his thing now. And Tessa. She hadn't said a word to correct it. So that's what I was now. A free laborer. A man who once said of course, and was now branded by it. The guest list. The missing name. The casual dismissal of Nora. The silence from Tessa. The pile of debt growing while they planned their country club pageant. That night I stood in the middle of the kitchen and looked at everything I'd bought, everything I'd prepped, everything that wasn't mine. And for the first time in my life I thought something I never dared to before. What would happen if I left? What would happen if I just vanished? I sat down, opened my phone and typed into the browser. Last-minute flights from DFW. I didn't press purchase. Not yet. I just stared at the screen, heart racing as if I'd cracked open a door to a life I had never allowed myself to imagine. Tuesday morning, the day before Thanksgiving. I was up before the sun boiling water to help thaw the turkey faster. The bird had been in the fridge since Saturday, but it was still icy at the core. I rotated it like a mechanic rotating a dead engine, willing it to come alive. I set timers, arranged stations with painter's tape like it was a science lab, raw meat area, pastry corner, dessert zone, clean plating section. It wasn't cooking, it was logistics, and I was the only one running the operation. Tessa came in around 9:00 with bags from a boutique party supply store. "Look what I found," she said, pulling out custom napkin rings, embroidered table runners, and a centerpiece shaped like a cornucopia. "Isn't it cute?" I nodded. "It's nice." She didn't notice I was elbow deep in brine. "Oh, and I rented new plates and silverware. The ones we have aren't well, they don't photograph well." "You rented from where?" She waved her hand. "That place on Main." I put it on the shared card. "Don't worry, it wasn't much." I didn't say anything. Just turned back to the turkey and swallowed the acid rising in my throat. An hour later, Margot called. "Blaze, I want to check timing," she said. "When's the turkey going in? Have you started the side dishes?" "What about dessert? I'm working on it," I said, trying not to snap. My hands were raw from scrubbing my back tight from hours on my feet. "Just remember," she added sweetly, "you're representing our family." That line landed harder than she probably meant it to. I wasn't a host. I was a mascot. I opened my email later and saw a receipt from the rental place: chairs, plates, linens, extra fees. Over $400, all charged to my account with a note in the invoice charged to Blay. No one had asked. No one had checked. Later that afternoon, I checked the group chat again. Margot had written, "Blaze is crafting a menu fit for the Harringtons. So proud of him. Crafting a menu." She wasn't just relying on me, she was using me as a brand, selling me as the talented son-in-law/personal chef. If it all went well, she'd get the credit. If it went badly, I'd take the fall. Around 5, I got a message from Nora. "I heard Margot told people I wasn't invited because you didn't want drama at the house. Is that true?" I froze. "No. I would never say that." "I didn't think so," she replied. "But that's the story now. People think you're the reason I won't be there." I stared at the message, sick. They weren't just using me, they were rewriting me. Dinner wasn't even cooked yet, and I was already being erased, replaced, reinterpreted to serve someone else's narrative. That night, I stood in the doorway of the dining room looking at the table I'd set. 30 seats, custom place cards, rented perfection, and I wasn't one of them. My phone buzzed. A text from Tessa. "Mom says we need to upgrade the ham. The Harringtons only eat from that gourmet place. She'll Venmo you later." She wouldn't. I opened the banking app. The shared account was down by nearly $2,000. I hadn't approved half of it. They weren't just assigning me work. They were building walls around me, tightening the trap, turning every exit into another reason I would look like the problem if I left. I stared at the numbers, and I knew I had already left in my mind. Now, I just had to find the courage to follow. By the time the sky turned indigo on Tuesday evening, I was hunched over the kitchen counter, flour-dusted, and feverishly rechecking my prep timeline. Every pot pan and baking sheet I owned was either in use or soaking. The dining table, still bare, loomed like a silent judge. I took a breath, walked into the living room where Tessa sat scrolling through her phone and held out a printed sheet. I need real help. Not decor, not playlist ideas. Actual kitchen help. She didn't look up. "Like what?" "I've laid it out. You do sweet potato casserole, green bean almondine, and 1 pie. That's it. I'll do the rest. Turkey ham stuffing gravy rolls the works. If we split it like this, maybe it won't implode by 2 o'clock. Now she looked at me. "You're overthinking it again. You always do this. Just get it done, Blaze. It has to be perfect this time. I don't want to hear Mom complain all weekend." There it was. Not agreement, not concern, just pressure disguised as reason. I felt it crack inside me, something brittle and long neglected. "Tessa, this isn't normal. You've told everyone not to bring anything, right?" She hesitated. "Yes." I didn't want a bunch of mismatched dishes. It throws off the aesthetic. So it's me, it's all on me. You're good at this, and you said yes. That last part dug in. She wasn't wrong. I had said yes. I always said yes. I walked away. Back to the kitchen. Back to my battlefield. The notifications pinged again. Margot. Bo Harrington is deathly allergic to pecans. Please confirm none in anything liability is real. Don't make us regret this. Followed by, also keep kitchen sanitized. A hair could ruin our rep. Rep, that word rang in my head. Our or hers, I kept chopping, measuring, timing. But my hands weren't steady anymore. Around 10, I found Tessa in the bedroom on the phone. She didn't lower her voice enough. If he screws this up, there needs to be a reason. We can't look bad in front of the Harringtons again. Just say he insisted on doing it all his way. No one can blame us if it's a disaster. My breath left me. He always acts like he knows better. Let him prove it. She hung up when she noticed me. Didn't explain. Just went back to her screen. I stood there staring. My wife was laying down the exit strategy for herself and for her mother, just in case I failed. I went downstairs, sat at the edge of the counter, stared at the turkey still half frozen in its plastic tomb. The oven light glowed, but it felt like a hospital corridor, too clean, too sterile, too hopeless. I pulled out my phone, typed in the airline site again. Flights from DFW, one way, the earliest. This time I didn't just browse, I started pulling my passport wallet charger. Small backpack. Travel light, travel quiet. I wasn't just thinking about leaving anymore. I was preparing. At 11:47, a message lit up my screen. Tessa. Mom says you need to cover the spiral cut ham too. Harringtons don't eat the cheap stuff. I stared at it. Then opened my banking app. A recent charge premium ham delivery. Nearly $200. Ordered with my card. Without my consent. I didn't feel angry. I felt done. The house was silent. Still. The kind of heavy quiet that drapes itself over early morning walls like fog. I woke without an alarm, lungs tight, pulse shallow. My body knew the drill before I did. Thanksgiving Day. I slipped out of bed. Didn't wake Tessa. I didn't want to see her face. Downstairs, the kitchen stood waiting, counters lined with ingredients, timelines taped to the fridge. The air already smelled like anticipation and expectation, not of gratitude, of performance. 8 a.m. My phone lit up on cue. Tessa stirred in the bedroom. A beat later, her voice muffled. It's Mom. She's checking on the turkey. I didn't move. Just stood there back against the counter, listening. Yes, he's up. Yes, he's prepping. No, nothing has pecans. No, I haven't seen the guest cards, but he's probably doing them. Yes, I'll remind him not to make it too salty this time. Every word an incision. No defense. No support. Then Margot's voice came through the phone louder on speaker. Remind him this isn't just food, this is reputation. If anything's late or sloppy or unsafe, say he insisted on doing it his way. That way no one questions you. I froze. And tell him Bo's allergic to time too. I don't care if it's unusual, no mistakes this year. Tessa muttered something. I didn't care to hear it. I slipped back into the kitchen and sat at the edge of the counter. 3:04 a.m. I opened my phone. Airline tab still open. Seat still available. I booked it. Departure 5:55 a.m. No checked bag, just one carry-on, one seat, no meals. I wrote a note on a post-it. The turkey's in the fridge. Oven preheated to 325. Timers on the fridge. Recipes marked. Good luck. I stuck it to the inside of the spice cabinet. The one no one ever checks. In my bag wallet. Passport, phone charger, a change of clothes, headphones. As I zipped it up, another ping. Nora. Are you okay? I heard from someone that Margot said you banned help in the kitchen. That you like control. Sounds off. If you need to talk, I'm here. I stared at it. For once, someone saw the strings. I typed back, thank you. Not staying. Heading out soon. No explanation, no guilt. I crept through the living room. Past the stacked dishes, the decor Tessa spent hours curating the name tags with gold foil she bought for $35 a pack. The guest list still lay open. I paused, scanned it. A note beside the Harringtons' VIP placement. Credit to host. Credit to host. Not to Blaze. Not to me. I folded the paper in half and tucked it under the centerpiece. I looked around one last time. Not at the things. At the rolls. At the prison of Polish I'd been handed with a smile. And at 3:17 a.m. I stepped out the door. No goodbye, no apology. Just the quiet click of a man reclaiming his own silence. I didn't slam the door. I didn't even let it click. I slipped out of the house like a breath-held two long-socked feet stepping silently across tile and hardwood until I reached the front door. My shoes were in my hand. My keys, phone, wallet, passport, and one small suitcase were all I carried. No jacket. No goodbye. I didn't look back. At 2:58 a.m. I reversed out of the driveway of the Frisco house I had spent the last 5 years cooking and cleaning and being used in. And by 3:12 I was parked in long-term at DFW. The sky was black, the air sharp, and my heart was hammering with a beat I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't fear, it was freedom. In the terminal I moved like a ghost. TSA barely looked at me. The woman at the check-in kiosk asked where I was going, and I said the first place that sounded like Salt Air Key West. One way. I slid my card across the counter and didn't flinch when the total flashed. Meanwhile, in my now former kitchen, the oven was cold. The basting brush still leaned in a mason jar on the counter. The turkey, still thawing, was wrapped in plastic in the fridge. The sticky note I left was placed dead center over the guest list, exactly where Margot wouldn't be able to ignore it. Tessa. Something came up. You and your mom will handle Thanksgiving. Groceries are in the fridge. Blaze. I didn't explain. I didn't write out steps. I didn't leave cooking times or tips. For the first time, I left them with what they always swore they wanted: control. I silenced my phone, boarded my flight, leaned my head against the cool plastic of the window and watched the world tilt. At 7:12 a.m., while I was ordering black coffee in a mug with a tiny spoon in Key West, the house in Frisco woke up to silence. No scent of turkey, no clang of pots, no sound of Blaze. Tessa found the note. She called me 6 times in the first 2 minutes. Then 10 more. Then she woke her mother. Margot read the note and, true to form, went straight to character assassination. He did this to humiliate us. She barked orders at Tessa to call caterers, grocery stores, anyone. It was 8:00 a.m. on Thanksgiving. Everyone was booked. No potluck, no contingency. Because Tessa had told every single guest that Blaze had it handled. At 12:14 p.m. the Harringtons arrived. Margot greeted them like a pageant host with cracked lipstick. Beau sniffed. Beau asked about the turkey. Then he asked about nut allergens. Tessa choked. Margot tried to spin. Beau's father asked plainly, "Was your son-in-law handling the meal?" Margot froze. Tessa smiled too wide. Aunt Janelle whispered to Uncle Rob, "Something's wrong." The smell of stuffing never came. The gravy pot remained dry. By 1:45 p.m., the mood had tanked. Beau was crying. There were no appetizers. Someone asked if Uber Eats was an option, and at 1:59 p.m. Tessa's phone buzzed. It was from me. A photo. I sat at a seaside cafe, the wind tousling my hair, a glass of wine in my hand, sunglasses on. The caption read, "Thanksgiving dinner in paradise. Perfection is your problem now." The photo lit up like a flare in a dark room. Guests gathered, they read, they connected the dots. Beau's parents left. Janelle sighed. So he was the one doing everything. Uncle Rob added, "We never even offered to bring a dish." Tessa's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Margot's jaw clenched. "He abandoned us." Mrs. Callahan, who dropped by with a pie, spoke low but sharp. "No, you drowned him, and he swam to shore." I turned off my phone again. On the beach, the waves erased footprints faster than they could be made. I walked, breathed, and for the first time in years, I did nothing for anyone but myself. But peace doesn't last forever, and neither do stories half told. I turned my phone on 2 days later. Missed calls, voicemails, texts swinging from furious to saccharine. Margot, you've humiliated this family. Tessa, please come home so we can talk. I ignored them. The one message I answered was from Nora. She sent a photo of the living room half-eaten pies cold turkey someone had panic-bought Margot yelling in the background, Tessa sitting blank-eyed. Her message read, "Now they see." She told me Margot was already spinning a new story. Blaze insisted. Blaze refused help. Blaze wanted it all his way. But Nora, the one they'd silenced, didn't let that fly. "I told them what really happened," she wrote. "People are starting to ask questions." 3 days later, I went back. Not to apologize. To finish the damn conversation. The house was still a mess. Cold plates stacked on counters, guest chairs half folded. Tessa sat at the table like a ghost of herself. Margot stood at the kitchen island, arms crossed. "So the prodigal chef returns," Margot sneered. I didn't sit. I didn't smile. "3 things," I said. 1. My name wasn't on the guest list. I was staff. 2. You charged everything to me without asking. 3. I heard the 3 a.m. call. The script was ready. Blaze insisted. "You were ready to let me burn if anything went wrong," Tessa whispered. "You weren't supposed to hear that." I turned to her. "But I did. And you didn't stop it." Margot bristled. "If you cared about this family, you'd have never left." I pulled out my phone, showed the receipts, bank transfers. The guest list with my name absent. Nora's messages. "You didn't want family. You wanted labor," Margot shouted. I stayed silent. For the first time, my silence was louder than her voice. Then I turned to Tessa. "This isn't just about your mom. It's about you letting her speak for both of you. It's about you watching me drown and handing me another tray." She cried. I let her. "So here's the deal. Next year, if we host Thanksgiving, it's 10 people max. It's potluck. Everyone contributes. You back me up when your mom crosses the line. And if we can't agree to that, I'm not doing this again." Tessa looked at her mom, then at me. "I pick him," she said. And for once, Margot didn't have a comeback. 1 year later, Thanksgiving looked different. 8 people, 1 table. Nora brought dessert. Uncle Rob made ribs. Tessa cooked with me. She burned the stuffing, and we laughed. Margot declined the invitation. At one point, Mrs. Callahan leaned over and whispered, "So, you made it to shore, huh?" I smiled. "Yeah, and I'm never swimming back. Because there's a difference between being needed and being used. And I finally learned which one I was. I used to think being needed was the same as being loved. I thought that if I showed up, did the work, filled every gap no one wanted to fill, people would look at me and see someone worth keeping. Someone they'd never dare lose. I believed that making everything perfect would earn me something close to belonging. Maybe even respect. Maybe even love. But the truth is, when you become indispensable in the wrong environment, you don't earn safety, you become a utility. And utilities don't get tired. Utilities don't say no. They don't get birthdays or comfort or rest. They exist to serve. And the second they stop working, the people who needed them simply move on, frustrated, inconvenienced, but never introspective. For years, that was me. I was the one who made Thanksgiving happen, every dish, every dollar, every last-minute run to the store. I didn't complain. I didn't keep score. I thought that's what family meant. Until I realized I wasn't part of the family at all. I was part of the production. This year broke something in me, and maybe in the breaking it saved me. I looked around at a table set for 30 people and saw no place card with my name. I saw group chats that treated me like staff. I saw a guest list where people were erased because they were too messy for the aesthetic. I saw receipts with my name on them not from generosity but because no one thought to ask me first. And worst of all, I heard the conversations, the ones where I wasn't just excluded but already blamed just in case things didn't go as planned. It wasn't a moment of rage that made me walk away. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. Cold, clean clarity. Because if you've ever stayed too long in a role that drains you, the helper, the fixer, the peacekeeper, You know the quiet way you disappear inside it. You know how lonely it feels to be surrounded by people who don't see your exhaustion as a warning, only as a signal that you're still functioning. So I left. At 3 a.m., while the world was still dark and my kitchen still silent, I walked out with nothing but a carry-on and a one-way ticket to a version of myself I hadn't met yet. The version that knows how to protect his own energy. The version that knows being loved isn't about being useful. Was it easy? No. Was it worth it completely? Because in walking away from the people who only saw what I could do for them, I made space for the people who see me for who I am. I've stopped apologizing for being tired. I've stopped explaining my no. I've started saying yes to places, people, and moments where I am actually invited, not just expected. If you've ever been the one who does everything, pays for everything, plans everything, if you've ever sat quietly while others took credit or passed blame, I hope you know this. You deserve better. You are not a machine. You are not selfish for wanting to be seen. You are not dramatic for needing rest. And if no one else has ever told you this before, let me say it now. You're allowed to leave the table where your worth is only measured by your labor. You are allowed to stop being what they expect and start becoming what you need. That's what I did. And I'm not going back. I think the hardest part isn't cooking for 30 people or even paying for it. It's the way you can stand in your own life and still feel like a ghost. Useful, dependable, so good at it, and yet somehow never truly seen. And if this story leaves anything behind, I hope it's this: being kind doesn't mean being disposable. Love doesn't have to cost you your sleep, your dignity, your peace. Maybe some of us have been Blaze. Maybe some of us have been the people at that table not realizing who was doing all the carrying. Either way, there's room for compassion here, because most people don't wake up trying to hurt someone. They just get used to comfort and forget what it's built on. If you felt something while listening, if any part of this hit close to home, then you're not alone. If you want, leave a simple hi or tell me where you're watching from. Or share a few lines about a moment you finally chose yourself. Only if you feel ready. And if you'd like to be part of this quiet little corner where we listen, share and heal out loud, subscribe and stay with us. I'll be here. Thank you for spending your time with me. And I'll see you in the next story.